Well, good evening, everyone. How are we all? Hope you've had a good couple of weeks since we've been here with Noir at the Bar, Edinburgh, and our spotlight showcase that we're going to have before this evening's Noir at the Bar. Before we get into conversation with our spotlight author, though, the fabulous Kelly Lacey has got a little bit of news about this evening's show. So, Kelly, hello. Tell us what's the crack, as they say.
Well, the crack is we wanted to be able to broadcast on different channels, not just Facebook, but YouTube, and open it up and get the show seen further afield. So we contacted some small businesses, and Pocari Chocolate UK is sponsoring tonight's event. And they have given us a discount code exclusively for you guys. It's Lovebooks10. You can get 10% off all their website. And they have a fabulous chocolate tasting experience just now that you can take part in at home. So yeah, they sponsored for the next few months. They're doing every showcase spotlight, and it's organic chocolate, ethically sourced, soya-free, vegan, all the good stuff.
Yeah, I had a look on their website this afternoon, and I have to say, it's a brilliant range of chocolates there. And really, what better combination than a good crime book and a good piece of chocolate? Maybe a glass of wine as well, or maybe not. No, but definitely a piece of chocolate there with the crime fiction. So it's so good that they've come in to sponsor this as well. So thank you, Pocari Chocolate, and yeah, I hope people get into trying a new taste in chocolate. Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks. I'll talk to you later. Have a good show.
Okay. Thank you, Kelly. See you later. So, the author that we have for you this evening is an author that I met last year at Newcastle Noir, and that is Danny Marshall. Danny was born and raised in Halifax, West Yorkshire, and he's heavily influenced by the dark industrial architecture, steep wooded valleys, and vast bleak moors of the Calderdale Pennines. And he writes crime thrillers tinged with horror, exploring the impact of geography and isolation on the character in these rural settings. He's a winner of the New Writing North's Northern Crime Competition, and his work was published in Moth Publishing's 2016 anthology, Northern Crime 1. Later that year, he was selected to pitch at Bloody Scotland, and in 2018, he won a Northern Writers Award for his thriller novel, Anthrax Island. In 2020, he's had a short story included in the Noir from the Bar crime anthology, which is out in a few days, so we'll be able to get our hands on that fabulous anthology. So please, everybody, welcome Danny. Danny, are you there? Yes, you are. Hello, Danny.
Good evening.
Hey, good evening. Good evening. I know we spoke a little bit before, and Dr. Noir felt that rather than wear a tie like she normally does, she'd meet you with the cap. And I think that's really good, just for a change. How's everything going with you, Danny?
Super, thanks.
Yeah. Are you managing lockdown life?
It's difficult. We're managing. Well, I'd say we're surviving like everybody else, just about. Yeah, it's difficult with two kids. We've got a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I'm working full time from home. My partner's just gone back to work after mat leave. She's doing 3 days a week full time at home. So yeah, it's a handful. Don't leave a lot of time for reading or writing.
I was going to say, given what you're having to juggle at home, are you actually managing to set aside even just a little bit of time to keep your writing ticking over?
Yes, I was, until the 1-year-old, the new child, stopped sleeping. She's going through a bit of a phase at the moment where she don't like going to bed. But yeah, I'm trying to grab as much as I can in the evening. Weirdly, I seem to be able to write and edit okay at the moment, but I'm really struggling to concentrate on reading. Ooh. Reading's more difficult. I see a lot of people saying the other way around, but
yeah, I really think, I mean, the whole situation, I think, affects people in in different ways. People can cope with certain things, and for others of us, it's like, I just can't go there. And I think the main thing is just doing it how best it suits you. and suits your family. I think, there's no
Yeah,
written
all you
rules here.
can do.
hmm But I am so glad that you've been able to join us tonight because, like I say, the notion of our author in the spotlight is for people that we would love to see those stories up on, up on Kindle, up on the bookshelves, paperback, hardback. We really don't mind, but we would just love to see. And I know you would, but we would love to see your work in print. So I wonder, before we get talking about your journey so far, would you care to do a short reading for us?
I can indeed, yeah. So I will talk about some of the things that I've written in a sec, I guess. But I was going to read from my latest novel that I've just sent to my agent. But I thought, since we're in Edinburgh virtually, I'm going to read from my first novel, which is set entirely in Scotland. So I'll read a short extract from. It's right at the start. You don't need to know an awful lot. I'm going to jump in about a page in. All you need to know is our narrator protagonist has just been dropped off by a military helicopter in the middle of nowhere on the northwestern Scottish coast in full hazmat gear, off to do a job. That's all you need to go. We'll go from there. That's okay.
Thank you.
Okay. The drone of an outboard floated across the bay. I watched a small speck grow into a dinghy. As it buzzed closer, I could see a figure hunched at the helm, a navy boatman, bent double to avoid the worst of the spray. I swung the heavy kit bag onto my back. Tape ripped somewhere near my ear as the hood pulled away from my gas mask. Could have been my imagination, but I swear a breeze tickled my hair. I shuddered, patting the tape back down, and picked up the toolbox. Reality kicked in, dropping heavy through my intestines. Despite the frigid air, sweat tingled on my fingertips inside my rubber gloves. Was I crazy for taking the job? I questioned my career choices for the umpteenth time. Low risk, they'd said. Easy cash. I don't know if they were lying or mistaken, but either way, I'm selectively naive when I need the money. The outboard snorted as the helmsman beached it on the sand. He made no attempt to leave the dinghy. There was a moment of impasse as we regarded one another over the grumble of the motor. This close, I could see the guy wore overalls with a simple filter over his mouth. Overkill for his task, I thought, but totally inadequate if things went tits up. Tyler? I nodded, wading through the foam. Who the hell else did he think would be on a Scottish beach in March, first thing in the morning, wearing a hazmat suit? Get a wriggle on, he added. I considered tipping the bastard out, but instead threw my kit into the dinghy and grabbed the side, dragging it back into the sea, turning it round on a wave. Tiny leaks let water into my boots, soaking up my jeans. Acting like air conditioning, it took my temperature down several degrees, something I hadn't thought possible. When I was waist deep, the helmsman twisted the throttle, which I took as a signal to haul myself in, facing him and the receding beach. Contrasting against the grim trees, a solitary whitewashed cottage watched us leave, curtains no doubt twitching. A postcard perfect scene ordinarily, but armed with the knowledge of where we were headed, the dark pines and granite outcrops scowled menacingly. I'd seen a graveyard up there as we'd landed, which suited my mood perfectly. I shivered, my feet were going numb, but if trench foot were the only thing I contracted in this godforsaken place, I'd consider myself lucky. The Navy man shouted above the outboard. I lifted a hand to my ear. What? I said, I drew the short straw, he yelled. Taking you out. Longer than mine, mate. You're the technician, then? I glared. I'd been hoping for a quiet ride. Won't catch me on the island, he continued. Not a chance, pal. He opened the throttle. The little boat skipped across the bay, smacking waves, spraying sheets of freezing water at my back. I heard the doors on those shitty decontamination chambers are knackered. They're all trapped inside. I didn't reply, still glaring. Are you army, then? The guy weren't going to shut up, so I shook my head. My company manufactured those shitty decontamination chambers. You're a civvy. I looked over my shoulder. We were closer now. I could see the island's features. Well, features is an exaggeration. The landscape was pretty bland. Resilient, scrubby grass and heather, punctuated here and there by stunted trees, bent crooked by decades of Atlantic gales. You've heard the stories. The Navy man was grinning now behind his stupid mask. Vanishing tourists, lights at night, fishermen that never come back. Watch yourself. It's not the ghost stories that scare me. I looked back at the bluffs and low cliffs. No circling gulls. I knew if he shut the outboard down, there'd be no sound other than the slap of the waves. They messed up, didn't they? He said, not having a technician on site. Typical army. I shrugged. I wouldn't know, I'm just a civvy. In fact, I did know. There was already a technician on the island who could very easily have fixed the doors on those decontamination chambers, were it not for the unfortunate fact he was zipped up inside a body bag. The boat dug into a wave. I grabbed a handhold. He laughed, offering to turn round if I was scared. If only he knew. We'll leave it there.
Danny, what a ride across the water. What is waiting for us on the other side? I am not quite sure. Now, in the information that you sent me, and you said that your agent, and I think the way that your agent has described Anthrax Island is brilliant. And he said an assured, pacey thriller, super smart thriller that combines elements of Alistair MacLean's Ice Station Zebra and When Eight Bells Toll, with the paranoia of the thing and tension of the Andromeda strain. I think even in that short reading that you provided for us, you can just hear that and feel it. You certainly do have a great way with that location description. And what I'd like to ask you about this first novel is, in the journey that you've had into, having your work received and the, the acclaim it's received so far, when did this book come into being, and why this kind of novel?
Oh, so I guess I first started writing probably about 6 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And the first ever thing I wrote was a horror novel, because I started writing horror. I love horror. And I love thrillers that kind of touch on horror. So I don't know, I'm thinking Silence of the Lambs off the top of my head. Is it thriller or horror? And I love that kind of that borderland. So I started writing that kind of stuff. I started writing horror. But the first thing I wrote was a zombie novel set in Yorkshire, near where I live. and it was I mean, I read it now and it's not the best, but it taught me a lot about writing. But more than that, it taught me a lot about the whole process. It taught me what an agent is for a start, and submissions and publishers, and the role of everyone. So it was all that kind of stuff. So it was fantastic for that. And then I thought, actually, I want to write the kind of novel that I really want to read, which is those great old sort of late 60s, 70s, 80s thrillers, Alistair MacLean, Duncan Kyle, Hammond Innes, all that sort of stuff, kind of retro. And so I started off writing that kind of thriller. And I stumbled across, when I was still sort of trying to write horror things, I stumbled across this island, Grignard Island, which is a real place. So there's an island off northwestern Scotland that was requisitioned by the MOD in 1942, and it was used for testing anthrax. And the plan was to drop anthrax all across Germany to end the Second World War and starve Germans into submission. Thankfully, it never happened, because what they discovered was anthrax never really dies. It stays around in the soil for decades and even centuries. People can still dig up medieval grave sites now of animals that died of anthrax and contract it from the bones. So this island off northwestern Scotland that the MOD had dropped anthrax all over and killed a load of sheep and chickens and God knows what else, they just left it. They put signs up. They literally erased it from the maps and left it. And it was lethally contaminated for decades until they finally cleaned it up in the 80s. And I kind of stumbled across it. I thought, what a brilliant place for a novel, this island, and no one's really written about it. It crops up in an Ian Rankin novel where he's talking about Scottish nationalism, because there's another thread there around the treatment of the island by the British government and things like that. So that it crops up in a few novels, but it's never been used as a setting before. And I thought, actually, if I want to write a thriller, I'm going to set it there, because I can incorporate that kind of horror element that I really enjoy writing, and combine the whole thing together.
It's wonderful. It sounds really good. James King's commenting. He says, it sounds like my sort of story. He says, authors that I grew up with and a piece of history I'm aware of, I'm sold on it. So this Yeah. So there's definitely somebody there, but I know there's more people out there who would love to get their mitts on this. Your main protagonist, you know, the guy in the boat,
The
the
technician
man,
chap.
yeah, the technician, the man of few words.
Yes.
And I think our caps are going down a treat as well. Yes. It makes a change. So I thank you for the inspiration, Danny. That's cool. When you were crafting that character, were you sure from the outset of the kind of protagonist you wanted, or as you went along, did he actually shape himself along the way?
Yes and no. So he was always, I guess there's always a little bit of the author in there somewhere. So he was always a man of few words, like you say. He's sarcastic. He's very cynical. He's very on the outside. He's in it for the money, whereas you dig a little deeper and he does have other motives there. Not all of them good. So he started off as a technician. I'm not giving away a great deal if I say that he's there for other purposes. There's a lot more going on this island than just. I mentioned in that reading his dead predecessor. There's a technician who's died on the island, and he's been flown out there and boated out there to take over. He's gone out there to investigate his predecessor's death undercover as the new technician. So that bit kind of did sort of, when I started writing the book, he was a technician and he evolved into something else along the way. And then from there, he evolved into a series character. So I've started writing a sequel now because I decided he was actually the kind of person that could be sent around the world or wherever doing these kind of jobs.
I think, yeah, I mean, I can see that happening. And I also, the fearless element that seems to be in this guy, I mean, because he evidently has a good idea of what he's going over for, and yet he's still doing it. Now, so Anthrax Island was that first novel that you put together. Was so Vic Watson's just asking, have you read anything by Andrew Michael Hurley?
I haven't. Sounds like I should.
A nice tip there.
Vic. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and thank you, Susie. You rock, Danny. Yeah, and the book sounds great. Loving the caps. Anthrax Island, was that the work that got you noticed at New Writing North?
Yes. So it's probably in real terms about my fifth novel, because there are a few in the drawer that never went anywhere. And then I wrote that one, and originally it was set in the 80s. It was set around the era of the actual cleanup of the island in real history, and I had real fun writing it. It was kind of it was very retro and lots of sort of 80s references in there, and it was fun. But then I went to Bloody Scotland. I was selected to pitch it at Bloody Scotland, which I did, and that was great fun. But they gave me some really valuable feedback there and said it doesn't necessarily need to be set in the 80s, and can you rework it and set it now? So I did, and it took me quite a while to do that because I had to rewrite basically the entire novel and deal with things like smartphones and various other elements. And when I'd finished all of that, I submitted it to New Writing North as part of their Northern Writers Awards, and I won it was a bursary to get support from TLC, the literary consultancy, which is basically you send your entire manuscript off and it's read by a suitable author, and they provide pages and pages of feedback and notes, and that was fantastic and that was invaluable. And then I rewrote it based on that, and eventually it got me an agent at the end of all that process.
Brilliant, great. Because I just think the whole notion, I mean, I can see this, optioned, turned into a film. It's got all that quality there. Yeah, Vic says Andrew Michael Hurley writes scary stuff full of atmospheric locations, and she reckons Anthrax Island would sit alongside that stuff really nicely. She says a British X-Files. So
Oh, wow.
cool.
I like
Yeah.
the X-Files, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Suspect you like.
And Susie says that idea of folk horror and under the disturbing stuff around that.
Mm.
Yeah. Lovely. So from Anthrax Island, because you have that submitted already, do you not? Yeah.
Yeah. So my agent, so that got me an agent, and he's sent that out on submission to publishers. And while he did that, I started writing another. But this one, the one that I started writing is a standalone.
All right. So not part of, yeah.
No, so I'm about a third of the way into a sequel to Anthrax Island, and then I've put it to one side for a minute just to write this other novel that I decided I needed to get out of my head.
Oh, can you tell us a little bit about that as well?
I can. So it's literally just gone to my agent. It's called Down in the Park, and it starts off as being ostensibly a heist, a bank heist, when a group of friends rob a bank. And they accidentally kill one of the bank employees, and fearing what will happen if they're caught, they'll go down for life. They take the body with them in the boot of the car, along with the money and Scarpa, thinking actually this could be a good thing because it'll throw the police off the scent. The police will think it's an inside job and all that sort of stuff, which they do. The police start thinking that the bank employee has done it, and they get his face out all over media and everything like that. And that's when people start calling up, because it turns out that this person they killed happened to be a serial killer, and he wasn't working alone. So now it turns out that they've just pulled a bank heist and now have the body of a serial killer in their freezer. And yeah, he wasn't working alone. He had friends.
I think the style that you put together, though, I think you're showing real, the versatility of your writing, because that sounds very different to Anthrax Island. And I love to see that you're not just writing in a pattern, but that you've got different angles coming on. People are saying, the notion that you're able to combine work, parenting, and writing, extremely skillful.
Oh, crikey, yeah. I wish I was better at it.
Yeah. And Christopher Patterson says, we need more heist stories.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of heists. I think I'm probably, in terms of heists, I'm more influenced by films. I love a good heist film.
Do you have a favorite heist film?
I love the classics. So it's really, really cliche, but I'm going to say The Italian Job, the original one. But I watched fairly recently, the book was Prince of Thieves. Is it The Town with Ben Affleck?
I think so. One. Yeah.
So yeah, I love a heist film.
Yeah, I would like to see it Down in the Park, up there on the screen. I really think that your writing has, that visual feel to it already. So 2 books with the agent, or 2 submissions with the agent. Yeah. And you're on with the second in the series to Anthrax Island.
I am. Yep.
Yeah. I'm so sad, and I know so many of the people who are watching and so many authors, that given what has been happening this year, the idea of somebody like yourself being able to get around to festivals, to be able to talk about their work, to be able to, to shout out about the stuff that you've been doing. And you evidently, I'm going to have to ask a last question. I wish we could have more time together. But you evidently do serious research. You can tell that from what you were saying about Anthrax Island, yeah? And I just wondered, for Down in the Park, have you ever, you didn't try a heist, did you?
I've never robbed a bank, but I do work for a bank. So there's a fair bit of, I don't want to say that that's how I do it, but yeah.
I was going to say, do you have insider information? No, you mustn't say that. I don't want to get you into trouble with the day job. Not at all. I'm going to ask you to do one last thing for us, and it might seem a bit cruel, but I don't think it is. But if you had to choose, if they said you could have one of these novels at the moment published, which one would you have published and why?
That's really difficult because I love them both for really different reasons. I'd say my heart is really more with Anthrax Island because it's my baby. And it took me years to write that, from the first draft through to the latest iteration that's going out to publishers. There was I lived 4 or 5 years of my life through that period, revisiting that island every day on the laptop. Down in the Park was written quite quickly, and whilst I love it, I'm probably more connected to Anthrax Island.
Well, I know the people watching have been saying we want to be able to read both. You've had some beautiful comments from people, and I know you won't have had time to respond, but the feed's up there on the Facebook page, so you can go back, Danny, and respond with people. I just really want to thank you for your time this evening, and I wish you all the very best. Thanks for being on, and see you soon, yeah?
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. See you soon. Okay, everybody. Oh, Kelly, hello.
Just to remind everybody that the code is LOVEBOOKS10, and to say a big thank you to Picari Chocolate for sponsoring this showcase spotlight event.
Fabulous. So we're going to take a couple of minutes to regroup with a few more people. Yeah. And we'll be back with you. So go grab yourselves a drink, have a wee comfort stop, and we'll be back for 10 authors reading from their work, and quite possibly authors that you might not have read before or heard reading before. So a chance to refresh your library stocks there. Thank you, Kelly. We'll see you later, yeah? Bye.